And I am not a Mac user, so just arrows, right?
Yeah, just arrows.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to change that. First of all, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity. I want to thank TRB, AASHTO, Federal Highways for making this possible. There's a lot of themes that I've heard today and throughout the week that I think are real common to Utah. A lot of those themes can be placed in different areas of our programs, but they tend to resonate over and over again. The journey, and I'm not sure if we stole that from North Carolina. I'm not sure where that came from, but I apologize if I helped to make that cliche. I hope I don't. It's very appropriate. There are never enough resources, and I think that goes without saying most of the time. I think the question that we have to ask ourselves, and it was pointed out first day of the meeting, is: are we spending our money in the right places? If we have that $1 left, are we distributing that in the right places to get the most bang for the buck? We have, in Utah, we have logical selection process developed for each class of projects for capacity, preservation, and safety. But just because we don't have enough funds doesn't mean we shouldn't start with a good program of asset management and figure out how best to distribute those funds. And that's always the biggest challenge. Is where do you pour the resources? You've got a lot of silos, and a lot of times it's real easy to prioritize within those silos, but trying to decide whether preserving pavements or bridges or doing safety projects or capacity projects, a little bit of our strategic direction and performance measures, is it from a statewide perspective? And then I want to talk a little bit about the history of our asset management program and really where we are today in Utah with asset management. And then the future, where we hope to be, kind of our most recent gap analysis. And then I'm going to end with a little bit of a challenge to industry. And it's something that maybe we can use here as future research, but it's something we're going to take home and we're going to talk to our vendors and see if we can't get them to help us out, because we obviously don't have the resources to go develop all the things that need to happen here. First of all, strategic direction. The overall strategy of the department has been developed in a document up here, and it clearly and concisely articulates the challenges, the goals, the objectives, and the direction and progress that our agency is making. That's something that's been in place for about 10 years. We use it to report to the governor, to the legislature, but most importantly to the public. And it's a document and a program that has helped build credibility and trust throughout the legislature, throughout the public, in ways that you can't imagine. The support, and we are incredibly fortunate in Utah to have the support that we have from our legislature. And I chalk a lot of it up to this document and the department's desire to be very transparent with how we're spending the money, and like I've heard it several times today, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not always a pretty picture that we report, but I think that also helps build credibility. The fact that we're willing to lay it out there and work really hard to make sure that the next time we report it, it looks better. So that's a really important document. The department focuses on 4 strategic goals to create that document: preserving infrastructure, optimizing mobility, improving safety, and strengthening the economy. And as I said before, it's always difficult to figure out, how do you prioritize between all of those core responsibilities there. I'm going to focus on preserving infrastructure today, because that's really where our asset management program is today. But our desire in the future is to bring in the other 3 and to develop a system where we can do some trade-off analysis and some cross-asset optimization on all 4 of those strategic goals. The most effective way to preserve a transportation system is to have a regular schedule of upkeep and prevent deterioration. Good roads cost less is a philosophy, and I think that was coined in Utah. I'm not sure if it was or not. Maybe somebody stole it as well. But is something we've been saying for a long time, for probably 30 years, and we've made it part of our culture. Every time we talk with legislators, with the public, we talk a lot about how important it is to do the preventative maintenance and keep that road or bridge in good shape as long as we possibly can. And so that's been an adage that's been used over and over again, and I think it's been really valuable in get our message across. So UDOT has set up in our asset management program several measures, and I'll focus here on pavement a little bit. We use overall condition as a pavement measure internally to talk about really the true health, but a lot of times this happens to be one on ride quality, IRI. A lot of times we use this as well to communicate to the public because that's what they see, that's what they feel. But we also know that that IRI can mean there's a nice fresh coat of paint over that wall that's got mold underneath. So we want to be really careful with how we use that. But by monitoring and maintaining pavement conditions within good and fair thresholds, we're able to increase the efficiency and reduce the cost of expensive reconstruction projects. We've set thresholds, upper and lower thresholds, and kind of the philosophy on that was we don't want to let anything get too low in terms of too many poor quality roads, because if we do that, we're going to get ourselves in a hole that we can't dig out of. We also looked at some upper thresholds and said, if we start approaching these, it's probably time to do that analysis and say maybe it's time to move some of the money into other areas. So it's helped us. Not sure if they're right or not. We'll probably adjust those over the years. I know we've made a couple adjustments over the last 10 or 12 years, and we'll probably do it again someday when we learn from somebody else on where best to set those. We do a lot with this, or a lot of the same thing with bridge conditions. We use good, fair, and poor based on MBIs, and right now we took off the thresholds, but the one thing that we always focus on are those bridges in poor condition. In Utah, we've actually taken our bridge asset management program, and it still is a little bit siloed, but we take that and we create what's called the critical bridge list. And that's a tool to communicate to the legislature and to the public on what projects are out there that we really need to be focused on. And generally, those projects include everything that's in the red, as well as some of those bridges in the yellow, and maybe one in the green if it's a fracture critical bridge that we want to keep an eye on. So that's been a tool that we've used in addition to this graph and this chart to kind of show the overall condition. UDOT has about 1,800 bridges on our system that we take care of. And one thing that we're proud of is, we've only got 15 bridges that are in the red, that are in poor condition right now. That's because of a lot of different circumstances. One, our legislature has been very generous in terms of capacity projects. We've been able to get rid of a lot of old bridges over the last few years with some major interstate reconstructions. But it's also just a focus on what's going on in the system and an ability for our structures department and overall our senior leadership to focus on those bridges that are in poor condition and try to maintain the ones that are still in good condition and keep them that way. So in summary on this, we identified what's important to meet our goals from a very high level. We put measures in place, and overall we probably have 30 to 40 measures max in the department that we try to focus on. We've invested money in those measures, and we believe it's making a positive difference in the transportation system. So to go back to that original question, are we spending our money in the right places? For the most part, I think we are, and it's been because of a robust asset management focus and a lot of help from people in this room or states in this room. So we've been able to beg, borrow, and steal shamelessly and put I think a good program together in a lot of areas. So a little bit of history on our program. We actually started asset management. I'm not sure we called it that. I'm pretty sure we didn't, back in the mid to late 80s. And I mentioned this good roads cost less philosophy. It was something that I remember one of our former region directors and one of my old, he was actually a football coach of mine, didn't even know at the time, kind of coined that and really pushed it hard on the department and on the public. And I think he published some documents that talked about why that is. But back in the late 80s, as a result of that, we also put together, and I think it was a spreadsheet. Maybe we didn't even have spreadsheets. It might have been more of a ledger where we identified every segment of highway in every state highway in the state, the historical segments, listed those out, put down when the major treatment was last occurred, and sometimes that's when it was first built. And then we put a strategy together of preservation treatments or maybe even rehab treatments for the next 30 years and tried to use that as kind of our roadmap. So that started in the mid to late 80s. And we were able to use that quite a bit, but it wasn't very sophisticated. And obviously we had a lot of, it was scattered throughout the department, so it was used sparingly, I guess. But it was a great start. Our real effort came in 2002. That's when our executive director, we had a major rebuild of I-15 through Salt Lake Valley. It was about $1.5 billion for that project, and our executive director, John Nord, who, by the way, is still our executive director today, amazingly, gave us the direction that we were going to develop a robust asset management system. He saw this asset, this crown jewel, if you will, out there, and under his watch, he wasn't going to let that deteriorate. He was going to make sure that we had a system in place that we could take care of it. So at his direction, he said, get out there and figure it out. Figure out how we're going to put a robust system in place. And we started doing that. We did a self-assessment survey, and I won't go into that a lot other than to say we found out there was a lot of fallacy between senior leadership and between the pavement engineers in the regions of what they believed we were doing. There were some big gaps there. But it was good. It created basically a strategy for the future for us. And one of the biggest things that came out of that that's still in place today was we established a quarterly asset management team meeting. And that meeting's chaired by our deputy director, and it still is chaired by our deputy director today. It includes all his direct staff, all of our region directors, as well as our region pavement managers. And quarterly, we sit down, we talk about policies, we talk about funding, we talk about process, we talk about asset management models, where we need to go today. But having Carlos, having our deputy director chair that and push that from the top has been, I think, the biggest key to success in asset management in Utah. I can't stress the importance of having senior leadership involved and pushing that enough. Here it is again. It's a journey. We started slow back in the 80s with, like I say, with that ledger. I'm sure it was, and I can kind of picture that now. But we started with that. We learned a lot about things like data collection, deterioration curves, pavement management treatments, all that kind of stuff. And as we learned, we kept taking little bites of the elephant. And we're a long ways from eating that elephant, I know, but I look at where we've come in the last 10 years, and I think we've done some stuff that we're really proud of. And so we're going to continue that. And, the philosophy we're going to follow is we have to keep taking little bites. We can't stop. So pavement data collection, UDOT has been using contractors for the last 5 years, and that was probably one of the biggest lessons learned on our performance measures, is that if we didn't have good data, there was no way we could reflect good performance measures. And so we started using data collection from vendors about 5 years ago. We collect IRI in a longitudinal profile. We have distress cameras that we use. They collect rutting. They collect wheel path cracking, longitudinal cracking. Trying to think what else they pick up. Recently, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, we entered into another contract to start using mobile LiDAR to collect pavement distress, as well as a lot of other assets in the right of way. And that's been an awesome effort, because it's brought a lot of those silos that traditionally didn't talk to each other together. And as partnerships, it's an expensive venture to go out there with mobile LiDAR, so you need multiple partners. You can't just do it with our asset management funding. But it's been able to bring a lot of those guys together, and I'll talk about that in just a second. One point I really want to make about performance measures, and this is maybe really critical. Last year, a little over a year ago, in our legislature, we had a couple of initiatives put up to vote, or at least one of them went to vote. The other one didn't quite make it. But we had a lot of legislators asking us, do you guys have enough money to maintain the roads? In Utah, we split our roads into 3 different categories. We have interstates, level 1, and level 2. Our interstates are self-explanatory. Level 1 is anything with more than 2,000 cars on it or 500 trucks per day. And then level 2 are the real low volume things. Well, we basically decided that all of our revenues, all of our resources were going to interstates and level 1 roads, and that our level 2 roads were essentially going to be taken care of by our maintenance crews. We weren't going to dedicate project money to those. So there was about $10 million statewide to take care of 2,700 miles. We were asked, what would you do if you had an extra $20 million per year or $40 million per year? And so we were able to take our asset management program and the model that we use and develop these curves and these projections and show to the legislature what that means. We basically could forecast where it was going today without anything. And then this graph on the right was a forecast with an additional $40 million a year. Well, there were 2 initiatives that came out of that. One was actually a gas tax increase. This is last year, remember, so the economy is not in great shape anywhere. I won't say it had real legs, but there was a lot of serious talk about it, and it was because of the ability to tell that story. The other thing that did happen last year was the legislature captured 30% of the growth in sales tax and dedicated that to transportation. And it was a direct result of this. And it was kind of an interesting story because the legislature passed the bill, the governor vetoed it, the legislature reconvened and overrode the veto. That's how strongly they felt about taking care of these assets. So I can't stress the importance of being able to have good data, good ability to convey that data and to convey those messages. Next steps, further refine. We have a bridge model developed now. We haven't had that in the past. That happened just in the last year and a half. We want to further define that. We're basically in a beta develop mode right now. But what we really want to get is that cross asset analysis between bridges and pavements. And that's our goal over the next year, is to be able to do a better analysis in that regard. Next steps also, we want to bring in the structure, or the traffic and safety, the structures, the maintenance, motor carriers, all in the asset management model, be able to do that trade-off analysis between all of them. Our collection of data has been a huge breakthrough, and the technology that's out there is incredible right now. But we've been able to bring all of those different divisions together and simultaneously put together a contract through our DTS group that, actually I'll give them credit. They did a great job. But we're going to be able to go out there and collect assets that we've never had before and detail on assets that we've never had before. That's really going to be valuable for this program. And one other thing that we're trying to do here is, this is kind of an example of the workstation base that we're going to have. I think most people have seen this, but you've got high-resolution pictures of your pavements out there. The software goes through and identifies all your pavement conditions and generates your reports automatically. You got your photo logger down at the bottom there, and it's a continuous photo logger. It's not like the one where we took 10th mile increments or quarter mile increments. But there's all kinds of data right there in one place at a workstation environment. Finally, just a quick challenge to the industry. We use multiple vendors. We have a vendor that developed our bridge and pavement models. We have another vendor that we use for all of our maintenance feature inventories and those assets. We have another vendor that we use that we just brought on to collect all of our data. And one of the things we're working on right now is integrating all those so they can talk to each other. We're doing pretty well with those that we have under contract. But the next step that we'd like to really take is with this mobile LiDAR. One of the really cool things about it is we might be able to take pieces of that and actually dump that into our CAD system and design from it. And we don't think that's too far off if we can get our CAD system vendor to start talking with them. So that's one of the things we want is a seamless integration between multiple vendors, tools for improved data entry and gathering, support from industry for performance-based contracting. I know agencies have done a little of that. Sometimes that's a challenge, but we really need to get there. And then tools for performance-based budgeting. Right now, we're able to do that on a regional level and distribute our preservation and rehab budgets for payments. But we need to do a lot better job of that across all the assets. So we need some better tools developed there. And with that, hopefully I haven't gone too far over, and we'll break lunch.
Okay.